Man, it is crazy how much peanut butter my daughter got on this hat. I tried to rub it off. Did not work. Anyway.
Be honest with me. Honest with me. Honest with me. Did I really give it all I had? Be honest with me. Honest with me. Honest with me.
What's going on, everybody? Sean David Grant. Another video for you. In the comments, my boy Jason Bordeaux suggested that I show you guys how I make the YouTube cover images for Trackstarz. So I thought that'll be a good one to do today. So first thing I wanted to mention, when coming up with cover art, you kind of have to develop your own style. And a lot of that style comes from your brand development. So I'll probably get into brand development in another video, but you kind of need to know your target market. You need to know the space you're in. You need to, have a good idea of what colors work for your industry. For Trackstarz, we're red, black, and white. That's kind of our colors. So that's what our images, YouTube images reflect. It could be as simple as just grabbing a still from one of your scenes from your video and then jazzing it up a bit. Some people do that. We chose to go with a black and white subject on top of a gradient red background with white letters. So that's kind of our look, but you could choose whatever look you want. We use Photoshop to edit. There's a lot of ways you can do this. You could do it in Canva, which is free. There's a lot of free software. GIMP, I think, is another one. So you don't have to have Photoshop for this, but most of these programs kind of work the same way. There's layers, there's different editing tools, text tools, adjustment layers you can add. All of that kind of helps you develop your standard. Now, what I would suggest, like what we do, once you figure out your look, and we've been through several looks, once you figure out your look, just make it into a template, just something that you always open right back up. Change out the letter, change out the words, change out the images, and then boom, you have another cover. So that's what I would suggest. Find a style, make it into a template, make it easy for you, and then just duplicate over and over again. Now, you can update as you go. I like to try and update as much as possible. When I see something, I'm like, I don't really like that anymore. Let me try and make it a little bit cooler. Then you can rebrand it and then make that into a template. So let me just show you how we kind of put together our covers. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna open up Photoshop. So this is kind of my workflow for covers. So for instance, the show we're doing today, we're gonna be talking about Lecrae, we're gonna be talking about Charlie Kirk, we're gonna be talking to AI, we're gonna be doing a line for line. I believe the line for line is Cardi B. So I usually take the line for line artist because our brand, Trackstarz brand, is really trying to kind of reach outside of the church to get people interested in what we're doing. So I always try to choose the mainstream artists to maybe catch the eye of a Cardi B fan to kind of bring them in. So you kind of got to know who your audience is. But for us, it's that. So I'm gonna take this. This is our YouTube template. This one doesn't have an image, but it still has a spot for me to drop an image. Now, like I said before, what's really important is fonts. Fonts really define your brand identity. And when you're starting out, you may be tempted to pick just a whatever font that you can find on your computer that's already there. I would suggest you venture outside of those. There's some safe fonts, Helvetica, that are on your computer, Arial, things like that. Those are safe, but I would suggest you look at sites like Abstract Fonts. There's a lot of free font websites, and honestly, eventually you may want to pay for some of your best fonts that really define your brand. I would even pay for those. So let's just go through it. Color and fonts. I'm just stressing that. Color and fonts. Those are so important. So now I got the inspiration for our current template from an image of artist Gavi. I don't know if you guys have heard of him. He was going to be on our show. I grabbed one of his press photos and I used it to make an ad saying that he was going to come on the show. And there's something about the background that I just loved it. It just looked so cool. So what I did was I found out what color the background was, and I used my color picker tool and I figured out what color that was because it was so close to the red that we used that I wanted. It's just something about it. It just had a tone to it that I loved. And I basically just remade what I saw in that background. I added some gradients. I added, some shadowy areas. So it just had it was dynamic the way because his photo, I couldn't just take his background because he was standing in front of it and he was casting a shadow on it. So I had to kind of, remake it myself. So this is my impression of that background that he was standing in front of. And it just looks so good contrasted with the white and the black. It was just a perfect mix for what we do. So what I do first is find an image. Photoshop, what you do is you file, place linked. If you place embedded, it actually copies the file in here, and I don't want to do that. Place linked, it just kind of references the file. It keeps the file where it is, so you kind of save space a little bit on your computer. So I'm gonna go find that Cardi B image. It'll drop it into my project, and I'll kind of show you how I laid out everything in a second. But it drops it into my project. The new Photoshop is really awesome because if you just pick this select tool and hit select subject, it'll find her and select her for me. I used to have to do this by hand, but now it's super easy. So it selects her. And what I want to do is I want to get rid of the background. So I'm going to go to select, inverse, delete. Oh, wait. So one thing I forgot. This is image is locked. So if I find it in my layers, where is that thing? Here it is. So if I find it in my layers, it needs to be rasterized. All right. So if I go to layer, rasterize, I can rasterize it as a smart object or just rasterize the layer. Either way will work for us, but I'll do it as a smart object for now. Then delete. Boom. Background gone. Isn't that awesome? All right, so I just unselect my background. Now I have her isolated, which is awesome for me. And now I just need to move her into this group that I created. So let me explain. See all the old images I've used over the past? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stick her inside of this group. And what this group has done for me is I added a drop shadow so that any image I throw into this group gets an automatic slight little drop shadow to separate them from the background. And also I have these adjustment layers added to this group, which makes them black and white and makes them the brightness and the contrast more suitable for black and white photography. All right. So we can go through that in a second. All right. So anything I add into this group gets that adjustment added to it automatically. So now all I have to do is move her to the right side. It's where I normally put my subjects. And then I need to grab my text. So I already pre-added all this text. All this is my text. So I just need to move. I'm just hitting the keyboard and sliding those bad boys over. All right. And then all I do every time is just change the text. All right. So for this one, it's going to be Cardi B versus Angie Rose. All right. So let me do a little surgery here. I'm going to change all this to Angie Rose. And usually for line, I put both artists, but this is just an example. So what I'm doing here is if you hit Command T, it'll allow you to transform whatever you have selected. And old versions of Photoshop, you had to hold Shift to keep the proportion. It's very important that you make sure you keep proportions. Like if I resize Cardi B, I don't want to stretch her and make her look weird, right? So let me show you what I mean. I'm gonna select Cardi B, hit Control T, and if I don't hold proportion, I can make her start looking weird. And I see this in a lot of people's graphics where they just kind of stretch a person out and it just doesn't look natural. All right, either they're too thin or they're too wide, and it just looks strange. So you got to make sure you hold proportion. And the best way to do that now in Photoshop is just don't hit anything, just drag it. It makes it a lot easier. So I'm gonna just Control Z that. All right, so for me, let me finish this up. You know what? Let's actually do this for real. Let me actually find Angie Rose. Let's do this one for real, for real. Place linked. Angie Rose. Rotate that bad boy a little bit. Actually, I will do that later. Let's just get it. All right, so if you remember, you go to Layer, Rasterize, Smart Object, Selection Tool, Select Subject. Did pretty good. Go to Select, Inverse. I'm probably going to make everything I'm doing here into an action. I'll probably cover that in another video because I do the same thing over and over again. So if you do the same thing over and over again, it's pretty simple steps. I'm gonna turn that into an action so I can just hit a button and it'll do all this for me in the future. But anyway, so let's do that. All right, perfect. Unselect. It's a little weird up here, so let's see if we can I'm gonna just give her a little bit of a haircut. Let's see what we got here. Yeah, just so I can have a clean subject. All right. What I'm doing to zoom in, I'm on a Mac, so I'm like pinching to zoom, kind of like how you do on an iPhone. So sometimes you need to get close to see details. Sometimes you don't. So now, typically, for our line for lines, we have the mainstream artist on the left and the Christian artist on the right. So what I'm gonna do is, to make this look better, is I'm gonna flip both of them so that they're kind of oriented towards each other. So if I go to Transform, Flip Horizontal, now she's kind of gonna be facing her, and I'm gonna move her over here. Boom, like that. And then I'm gonna try and get Angie, same thing, edit, transform, flip horizontal. Boom. Now she's going to be kind of facing like they're kind of in a battle, right? The words on her shirt are going to be backwards, but who cares? All right. Let's stretch that out. Get her to kind of be similar proportion to Cardi. They don't have to be exactly the same, but similar. All right. And something, oops, see? There you go. Something like that. And then I just need to drop Angie into my group that I made. Boom, see? Now, what I need to do is I'm gonna scoot Cardi over a little bit, and I'm gonna see if I have some room to make her a little bit smaller. See, I want them to have a similar eye line, so I'm gonna leave her right there. That's pretty good. Scoot Angie over a little bit because I need room to drop the words in the middle. All right, so I'm gonna take this whole section here, Control T, switch to my move tool. The only problem with this is it might, okay, good. All right, so now I'm gonna try and get all this in here. So I'm gonna shrink this down. Boom. All right, so we're not done. I need to grab Angie Rose name and my logo here and move those down so I can add verses in the middle. And I also need to make Angie Rose name white. Boom, like that. And then I'm gonna take, I have this text right here that I'm not using, and I'm just gonna turn this into verses. Boom, like that. And I'm gonna make this verses black just so we can have a little contrast. All right, drop that right there. And let's make this look a little cooler. So I'm gonna make the verses kind of big. This is a battle. All right, so now these are, I know these are straight already because I already had them centered, but let's say your text is not centered. What you can do is highlight all the text that you want to make sure is centered. Boom, boom, boom. And then up here, you'll see these guys. So it wasn't actually centered. So it's a good thing I did that. What I could do also is grab all of these and see if I can center everything. Boom, look at that. All right, so verses is a little low. There's also a way you can kind of evenly distribute your items, but because these are all different sizes, I'm nervous. Let's see what happens. Actually did pretty good. You got to be careful with that because sometimes if things are different sizes, it'll move them in a weird way, but that was actually perfect. So I'm going to take all of that and scoot it just a little bit this way, and then boom, that's a cover right there. All right, so the reason I like this is because the emphasis is on my colors, my black, white, and red. The background has a slight gradient, which gives me a little bit more of a mood than just a flat. You can do flat too. That might stand out better actually on YouTube. But this gives me a little character. It makes it feel like a photograph versus just graphic design. And then the reason I like to black and white everybody is because different images are different, right? Like they have different colors, they're shot in different light. This way it gives me a consistent look no matter what, every single time. Black and white on top of red, easy. All right, so Cardi B versus Angie Rose. Export, quick export as PNG. And then I have a folder in my Dropbox where I throw all these images in, and I just find the last one I did, and then I just change the name. Boom. So hopefully that helps. Last thing I told you guys I was going to show you was these adjustments. So like for instance, let me just drop in an image. I'll just drop in that same Cardi B image on top of all this. All right, boom. So let's say this is what I was working with. Adjustment wise, what I could do is I could put an adjustment layer on top of this, and I can make it black and white. Boom, like that. See what it did? It added a layer on top of my current layer. So anything underneath that gets this adjustment. See that? And you could turn them off. You could dial them in. Let's say you don't want it to be 100%. You could turn it down, right? See that? So you can change the blend mode. Different blend modes have different effects, so you may want to play with how it blends. But adjustment layers really give you a lot of power to create interesting, original images. For example, here's one more. Let's say I was the one who took this photo and I wanted to kind of touch it up a little bit. I could add some curves on that bad boy. If you saw my last video, I talked about curves and the power of curves and what they can do. All right, if you want to get that faded look to your image, you could do the same thing in Photoshop. Same idea, right? So you can really get custom images in here. For instance, you can also change the hue. Like let's say your style is everything is not the right color, right? You just, every picture you add, it just looks weird, and that may be eye-catching to people. It's like, oh, that's Cardi B, but she looks crazy. It's up to you, right? You can make everything red or whatever, right? That's a lot of YouTubers do something like this, where they add a color to everything, where it's not black and white, but it's something going on, right? So there's a lot of possibilities. So what I would do is trial and error, make a couple different styles, test the audience, see which one works the best, and if it's not working, change it. All right, so that's my suggestion. Just have fun with it, play with it. I made a template for Trackstarz that it was crazy, it was creative, but it was just a little too crazy for us, and it didn't match our brand colors, and it didn't really get a good reaction. So I went back to the lab. Shout out to David Livick is actually the one that was like, this looks cool, but it's not really looking great, right? And I was like, okay, I'll take that criticism. And I went back to the lab and I made it better. All right, guys, leave a suggestion, leave a comment, let me know what you want to hear me talk about. I'm trying to get to everything I hear. I've got like a list of like 10 things people told me offline, but I want to hear what you guys think. So please like, subscribe, ring the bell, set that joint to all, and follow me, support what I'm doing, because I'm here to support you guys. All right, peace.